Okay, we're here today with Michael Connolly of the CPR Group. Michael is a tag partner in delivering and developing our about to be released Clubs resources modules and the entire pack, which is a great piece of work that is designed to help clubs run better meetings. I guess, Michael, is the best way to do that, to be effective in what they do, to help our clubs officers share that information and make it easy for everyone to come up to the standards that we expect of those. So we thought we'd take a couple of minutes out today and just chat with Michael in relation to the challenges it faces not only our members and our clubs officers, but the clubs that they also administer in terms of what the COVID-19 crisis is throwing up in terms of challenges. So with that in mind, we're just going to go through a couple of questions. So Michael, hello. Thanks for attending today and being with us. Thanks for all the hard work you've done in the modules.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Michael, no worries. What impact do you think that coronavirus is going to have on clubs as we move forward, given that we don't know how long it's going to last?
Yeah, look, I think that my hope, if I can start there, is that it won't have a massive impact on the health or safety of the people in the clubs. As it looks today, there's a good chance that the clubs won't be massively affected directly by coronavirus. But I think that really the biggest impact that it will have is what I'm referring to as forced downtime. That means that the operations for clubs will pretty much be on pause for some time. We don't know exactly how long that will be. It could, for the clubs that are about to go into winter sporting seasons, for instance, it could end up being the entire season. And for all of the clubs and societies, it might end up being the remainder of 2020.
Yeah, it's a changing landscape at the moment. A crystal ball would be great to have right now. Are there things clubs should be doing, do you feel, to remain viable in that enforced downtime you talk of?
Absolutely, yeah. I think that the first step that clubs can take is to have a look at their money. So money is obviously going to be the thing that gets those clubs through that have set themselves up in a position to be able to be resilient. So income will go on pause in exactly the same way that their operations are going on pause, which means that clubs have an opportunity to go and analyse the expenditure sides of their budgets to see what of the costs that we consider during a normal operating environment as our fixed costs, which of those now become potentially variable costs. So are there negotiations that we can enter into with our student associations, guilds and unions, and even with suppliers to be able to make sure that we've got the ability to control our outgoings at kind of the same rate as we're controlling our income. That's really financial. I think that possibly even more important than that is that this is an opportunity for clubs really to test how good they are at staying in touch. So communication in times of crisis is always critical. It's always key. And now probably more so than ever because we don't have the opportunity to do that face to face. So keeping members informed is really important, but it being 2020, we've got great tools in social media to be able to do that. And I'm already seeing some really good ideas coming through, like coaches who are running online coaching sessions to keep people active, to keep people engaged and to keep people still able to learn. And finally, I think that committees also need to stay in touch and not leave budgeting all up to the treasurer and say, well, you go and do that on your own, or leave all of the negotiation with suppliers all up to the president to be able to do that collectively. So staying in touch as a committee is really important.
Thanks, Michael. How about training and keeping house, tidying things up, making sure that everyone's up to speed, given that the club's resources that we've developed jointly are very much about making sure that they have the right tools to do that. This is, I imagine, a great opportunity for them to take stock of what's happening at home.
Exactly. And look, I think this is probably my favourite point is what do I think that we really should be focusing on right now is let's use this forced downtime as best as we can. So I think that this is fascinating in that we never in our generation have we seen a period where everything has stopped. So this is very likely to be the biggest change that we see in our generation. And that is having a massive impact and a terribly negative impact on the economy. And it will take businesses a long time to bounce back. That being the case, a lot of clubs, most clubs, and especially university clubs will find themselves in a situation where they're not needing to have the heartbreaking discussion about standing down or laying off staff, which means that if they can control their budget, they can be in a position to take things easy operationally over the next few months, but to use this forced downtime in a way that we've never had the chance to do before. So what better time to get ahead with, we always say we need to look at the Constitution. let's do it. We've got time now. We always say we need a risk management plan, or better yet, a disaster recovery plan for next time something comes and sideswipes us that we weren't prepared for. Let's take this time to develop those things, bylaws. Let's create an asset register. We all should have one to know where our assets are, who's looking after them, who's maintaining them. So let's use this time to do that. But probably the most important thing that we could do is to say, when we bounce back, so our response now is critical. If we respond with a really positive mindset, if we go into this with eyes wide open and say, we've got the ability to do things that we've never done before, let's take a strategic approach to how we plan our response and how we plan how we enter into the recovery phase, and put ourselves in a position to bounce back perhaps even better than we could have been had we not been forced into this position. But it will only be the clubs that take that really positive, we're going into this positively, we're going to be the winners out of this mindset, that will win. Because if we get stuck in the vortex of despair and just going around and around in a cycle of woe is me and oh no, who can give me a handout? Well, the handouts, they may come, but if we develop our own resilience and our own strength, then it will be those clubs that are the ones that are best placed to bounce back.
Yeah, that's a great point, great sentiment in that. Certainly, continuity plans is one, I think, for some of the larger clubs, particularly moving forward as well. And then there's a question of AGMs that would have taken place when they're all in suspension or remote from each other. So in terms of meetings online, is there any best way that you see for clubs to be able to bring meetings together online?
Yeah, definitely. So I think online meetings are better than just a teleconference, because it's the closest thing we get to face. It is the next best thing. It's obviously not as good as being in the same room together, but it is the next best thing. My main feeling about online meetings is turn the camera on. Really, nobody cares how you look without makeup on. Just creating any way to get connection with community is fascinating. And I can speak personally in that my team has now started meeting online much more regularly, and it's not because we have a 9:30 every morning staff meeting, but because we're not in the same office and we're not able to communicate and have that time connecting as people who all have common beliefs, because we all like each other and work well together. So it was interesting that it was the people who've always said, oh no, I don't want my camera on, I don't want my camera on, who said, I think we should all turn our cameras on because I'm missing you. we all like each other. So as far as platforms go, I'm happy with all of them that we've used. We've used Messenger, Google Hangouts, Zoom, Skype, Zoho Meeting, GoToMeeting. I don't think that the platform matters as much as people's comfort with the platform. So if people are comfortable using Skype or using Hangouts or using Messenger, then by all means go for it, keep doing that. But I guess as a matter of courtesy, if you aren't talking, turn the mic on mute. And if you need to get somebody's attention, again, with the camera on, you can say, hey, I'm here, time to talk to me.
Yeah, the holding webinars and forums and meetings when it's just a sea of initials on the screen is really disconcerting. I can attest to that, Steve.
It is
Very good to see people's faces, and you get this warmth into the meeting that works in everyone's favour. You touched earlier on what the executives should be focusing on. You talk about finances, continuity plans, AGMs, and all that. Do you think there's anything else apart from the black and white, the operational nuts and bolts of running committees and associations, etc.? Is there something else, do you think, from a leadership perspective, that executives should be looking at in keeping these clubs buoyant?
Yeah, look, and it does come down to good leadership. And I think that positive mindset and being able to be in a position where you can say there is a lot of negativity and this is a really tough time for everyone. If you keep raising yourself out of that, and it does take an effort to do that, but it takes an effort to check yourself before you get caught up in the worrying about what's in your circle of concern, but maybe outside your circle of influence. So the world is a very big place and there's a lot going on that concerns me greatly, but I can only control what I can control. So if we as leaders of our club spend our time focusing our efforts on what we can control, then we're far better off having the ability to create change once we come out the other side. And so that, I think, is the most important thing, is having that positive mindset and really staying positive regardless of how dire it is. Even at home, with our employment situations, we have the ability to keep our clubs ticking along, even though it's in a different mode of operation than it's ever been before. because I have a feeling that we will need a sense of community more so than ever before. So as far as the long-term impact on membership, for instance, I'm not too concerned that people will drift away from their clubs entirely. I think that naturally, because we have developed a sense of community and a sense of need that our clubs fill, I think that people will naturally gravitate back. But if we're staying in touch with them, if we are communicating regularly as the club and as the executives, as leaders of those clubs through social media while we are connected, how we can connect, then I think that it's those things I think that will really set the best clubs aside.
Thanks, Michael. That's an interesting one, in as much as you know, most universities are now student-free, or certainly approaching student-free. Events generally on a lot of campuses have been cancelled in their entirety. Externally, no group meetings of over 100, as we know. Venues are being shut, events are being shut. So where does the liability sit if a club decides to go against the advice of the student organisation and takes an event off campus in direct opposite to instruction and to, you know, perhaps government edict or whatever? So the liability question has always been a big one. How do you see that?
Look, I think that that's a really important point, and clubs, the executives themselves must take this as seriously as everybody else. So if a student association has in effect put a hold on all of the student association's activities, the clubs are part of that. So clubs that are not separately incorporated but only act as part of their student association must adhere to the rules of the student association, and even separately incorporated clubs are not laws unto themselves. So if there are laws that are passed, and even health guidelines on restrictions of gathering sizes and those sorts of things, they must be taken into consideration, because any protection that would be afforded to an organisation for an honest mistake where somebody's acting in good faith in the best interests of their members and within the law, that layer of protection doesn't apply if you've acted negligently. So where there's a risk of somebody acting negligently, then that negligence would fall directly onto the leaders in that organisation. So it's definitely an area to be careful and follow the guidelines. We've got plenty of smart people in this country who are telling us how we should behave and how we should act and how to take care of ourselves and our loved ones. So I think the best advice is let's do what the smart people tell us to do.
Thanks, Michael. You'd be one of those smart people, which is why we're talking to you. In terms of that too, so they're off campus, as we know, there's no events, we've said this. A lot of our members at the moment are migrating online programs, activities into a digital forum, into the digital space, which is great. Are there any other ways you feel that clubs can be engaged to remain part of the community when they're not physically in touch with each other?
Yeah, I think that using digital tools is the best way to do it. So whether those are live interactive digital tools such as webinars and online meetings, but even when that's not the case, and I think recording little snippets of videos with information and a minute and a half is fine, if that's providing something that there's really 2 points here. There's maintaining the sense of community, but there's also maintaining a top of mind position so that when the recovery begins, any clubs that have been strong and have had good memberships will continue to do that in exactly the same way as if we take a business-like approach, then we want to maintain our customer base and even look at it as an opportunity to expand that customer base when we come out the other side.
Thanks. And speaking of snippets of information, we don't want to run too long. We're going towards the end of where we should be. I'll just finish off with one question. You know, which clubs do you feel are going to be best placed when this crisis finally passes?
Look, I'd love to say the ones who can grab their time machine and go back in time and get better prepared before it started, but that's obviously not going to be the case. So those that were well prepared beforehand, and even had crisis management plans, continuity plans, risk management plans, and knew that something can happen and something can sideswipe us or blindside us, and we're not prepared for it. So I think that those clubs who were in that position will be able to come out of it very strongly. But they're not the only ones. I really do believe that it's the ones who can say, we can win, we can use this as an opportunity to even grab some market share from the clubs with a negative mindset. So if we take that positivity and and maintain it. And because we're a committee of like-minded people who all have the same beliefs and passions, we can watch each other's backs. And if we do start to get into that vortex of groupthink, then it's very easy for one of us to say, let's keep it positive.
Yeah, thanks for that. Totally agree. And if there's one thing I'd say, and we've said this quite a few times in the last week, is obviously there's a lot of anxiety going through the sector. Everyone is basically having to adapt on a day-to-day basis. The silver lining amongst all of this, there is to be one, is that we will come back stronger from the learnings. We'll be tested in ways that we've not been tested before. We'll have to think in ways that we've not had to think of before, and we'll come up with answers and solutions that will put us in a much, much better position from a club's perspective, from a student association perspective, from a community perspective, and societally. So, it's great to hear some of your answers today, because they do kind of all marry into that. And it is really about understanding the scope of what we have ahead of us. The advice that you've given is a great part of how we'll deal with that, or how the clubs will deal with that, and our members. The modules, when we release them this week, the resources that we've developed with the CPR Group and yourself, will certainly be a large component of being able to make it a much easier transition into a more formidable club as they go forward. So on that note, I think we'll say goodbye. Thanks so much for your time. Looking forward to talking to you once we've seen the response coming back from the resources when they're released. Take good care of yourself. Stay safe.